Hello YouTube. I just want to bring you guys a build update to show how the character is looking right now. And more importantly, I've been having a lot of questions from people basically asking me like, yo, you have this cheap POB and then you have this super expensive POB. How the fuck do I go from this cheap POB to this expensive POB? So I did go ahead and make a progression POB, which basically shows going from the live version that I have in my POB commands to a new and improved pre-miniature setup, which I'm quite confident you can get all of this set together for less than a mirror with current prices. And this setup should be able to get you running through 8 mods, wrist scarabs, and just doing all content in the game. So let's start off by just showing the changes I've made to the build so far since the last update. The biggest changes have actually been I introduced an Animate Guardian to the setup. So one thing which doesn't have like an easy way to deal with when doing rust grabs is the action speed mod. Now, generally speaking, the action speed mod, if you play Penance brand, is actually just not that big of a deal. Because the way that brand skills work is like you put the brand down, this attaches to an enemy, and it just keeps pulsing and doing damage to that enemy until it kills it, and then attaches to the next enemy. And you can only have like a max of 5 of these on the ground. Yeah, like 5 of these can be on the ground at a time. So it isn't really something where you're like just constantly spamming it. You kind of just go into a pack, you like double tap right click, go next pack, double tap right click. But I still thought it would be worth including an Animate Guardian. And on the Animate Guardian, I put a Garb of the Ephemeral on, which not only makes it that our action speed cannot be reduced below base value, which makes mods like the action speed mod and Drowning Orbs significantly less relevant for our build. I also gave it a Kingmaker, which is giving us Cull and Fortification, which is really good tankiness stats. And then the rest of the items is a Master of the Stitched Demon King, a Southbound Gloves, and just boots with life regen and reses on it. All of those is just some added tankiness to keep the AG alive. If it does die, it's not the end of the world. It mostly stays alive when I do like T17 Abyss 8 mod risk scarabs, but I have recently started doing Blight maps instead, and it tends to die a bit more on Blight maps. I'm still trying to think if I'm gonna keep it or not for Blight specifically, because Blight is like different type of content, but it's not too difficult to do on this build. That being said, the way that I've found the gems to fit this in is on my automation setup, I completely removed Arcane Surge from automation. Because before we had like an automation of Arcane Surge, and then a second automation link for like for the steel skin and the convocation. Now we have this all on the one link, and on my helmet, I actually dropped the crit multi support and I added Arcane Surge support. Arcane Surge support is honestly very, very strong. It is extremely, extremely powerful. And this buff from Arcane Surge lasts very long because we have the rune graph of the warp, which makes buffs from us expire slower and debuffs expire faster. This rune graph is super strong. It helps with like the you deal no damage 3 out of 10 seconds mode, because it makes that buff fall off you faster. It's just a very, very good buff to have, very quality of life, and I actually think it's very worth having. And on top of that, any sort of like extension that you have to brand duration. So for example, if you took these nodes, which I'm still considering if I should take them again or not, also extend the Arcane Surge buff. So with the brand duration nodes, this buff is actually going to be 9 seconds long. So you basically always have this up. It's 100% uptime, which is really nice. And then for my aura setup, I'm using Discipline, Hatred, Herald of Ash. My Mercenary has also changed a bit. My Mercy now has a Malediction helmet on it, which is very, very powerful. Not only does this make enemies take 10% more damage, it also makes them deal 10% less damage, which is very, very strong for a build. I put Unnerve on my Merc as well, which allowed me to move Unnerve away from my gloves and instead get Blast Freeze that frees you inflict spread to other enemies on my gloves, which is a very, very strong defensive mod. And that also allowed me to drop my cold cluster that I had and instead pick up a second 12 passive cluster. We are currently running 2 12 passive clusters, which this gives us an insane amount of energy shield. And if you look at my ES, it is at 12.5k right now. If I were to also mirror different boots and mirror like the Onslaught and Wavering Stance boots, my energy shield would go up to like 14.5 to 15k. That is something that I'm considering to do, but obviously losing like Tailwind and Elusive does suck a bit. But it might be worth it if I'm like just farming Blight and things. Other than that, we also have our Hatred Discipline Mage Blood, we have our 4 positive Helical, our +8 focused Amulet. I made a mirror chest, which was mostly just I wanted to make one because I didn't see there was any, and I wanted an excuse to make a 30 quality chest because I wanted a bit of extra ES from it. But this was a very, very easy and lucky craft. We obviously also using our mirror helmet, and I made my own mirror dagger, which I mirrored for my offhand. And we're still using our Mindful Prophet God. These are my flasks, in case you don't know what they were. But yeah, those are the main changes to the setup. Also, I started going down here now, because Soul Thief gives us energy shield on kill, and Mind Drinker gives us mana on kill, which this just feels amazing to have in the build. This is like 2 forms of recovery we have now. And on top of that, I'm using my 3-mod Watcher's Eye, which has the Discipline, like gain energy shield when you hit an enemy while affected by Discipline. This mod is completely busted. It is so good to have. It feels amazing. I highly, highly recommend fitting this in. And we're using, obviously, the Rune Graph of the Fortress, which is giving us reduced attributes but increased global defenses. And we have so much int in this build that we still have enough int to tattoo Energy Shield over every single int notable you see here, which is just a nice bonus. Now, let's go to the progression POB, and I can show you guys like how to go from the cheap setup to the expensive setup. I didn't look too much at the cheap setup. This is still like my under 10 divine cheap setup. I'd made a few changes specifically to like the cluster jewel, just like optimize them a bit more. But in general, this is still like the exact same thing as what I have in my POB command. But what I've done now is I've added nodes giving you both a damage priority and a tank priority on what to upgrade. Because like whether or not you need more tankiness, whether or not you need more damage, that is going to be just dependent on the content you're farming and how the build feels for you. So I wanted to give people both options to look at. But for the pre-merger setup, I spent a bit of time. I've also tried to be pretty careful of this to like make sure that everything here would fit within the under a mirror budget, or at least close enough to like a mirror budget. Obviously, prices and things are going to change. At the moment, you could get this off under a mirror. Maybe things will go up in price. I'm sorry if that happens. But this setup is definitely going to be able to like form 8 moderate risk scarabs and things for you. And it has a pretty clear progression path. The big things that I've changed from like this setup now is I did update my gems to be the same as it is on the multi-mirror tier setup. I do think this gem setup is very, very strong. I swapped the wands out to just normal cast speed wands without the implicit explode because the explode implicits just aren't worth it. You might as well just mirror like my dagger before you bother with that. I just gave us a mid-tier Archdemon Helm, which is like 18/18 plus 2% crit. The most important stat here is just the crit. Have at least 2% crit. If you have 3% crit, that lets you like drop crit from the passive tree and put it into other places like Energy Shield, for example. You know, just a bit more tankiness. And of course, I swapped the body armor out just for like a triple Energy Shield body armor. This is a 1260 Energy Shield body armor that I found. That was like, I think it was like 45 divines that I saw it for. But that was without implicits, and it's not 6-linked. You can obviously just go and craft your own. Just literally just take a body armor, just spam click dense fossils until you get like T1, T1, T2. Just anything like that. Then you take your titling orbs, you get 8% explicit defense modifier. Then you just use Eldritch Currency, just try to get like a decent res roll and int. Int is just nice to have because that's a lot of energy shield that you're getting. For the mid-tier gloves, I think the tempo mod is really nice to have. Just get yourself like the fractured tempo mod on like Warlock gloves. You don't need to unveil brand attachment range. It's not too expensive to go for, but you can just get unlucky and, you know, just missed them a bunch of times. You don't need the brand attachment range. Like, if we don't have this brand attachment range, we still have 6.1 meters. That's really good. You know, that's gonna be fine. And this is just like a tier 2 energy shield and a tier 4 energy shield, I think. This is a 21 quality base. It can obviously be 20 quality base. I was just like editing my current gear and just like lowering the attributes somewhat by a lot. 3-star Abyssal Jewel, Crit Multi, Energy Shield, Phasing. The two important ones is like Energy Shield and Phasing, but Crit Multi generally is just a good stat to have. I didn't cheap out on the boots because it's kind of difficult to cheap out on these boots. But without me just going like, just make a Warlock boots instead, it's just gonna be better. But these are still just your generic double elevated boots with a tier 1 res and then elusive. For the amulet, this is the first piece of tech that like I found from people on my stream that suggested it. Focused amulets are so unbelievably expensive right now. The base is like more than 100 dove. You can buy yourself a +3 Penance brand replica Dragonflight for like 7 divines. This is absolutely incredible. A focused amulet is 20% better, but like this is such a powerful like budget option until you can afford the focused amulet. Just a generic non-reflect helical with a Calandra's touch. We are going for int and strength and dex now on the helical. Before, what we were doing is we had res on it, but I found that like instead getting res on your large cluster tends to be better, because eventually if you do reflect the helical, that extra int is very, very useful for like tattooing your whole tree up. I don't have this tree tattooed up yet. When I do publish this video, I'll have it tattooed up. It's just something I forgot to do before recording the video. And then just a Mage Blood with attributes on it. Arrives End for Explode. This and Heart of Ashes is the only source of Explode this build has. It is going to feel a bit iffy at times. It's not the best source of Explode. If you want more Explode, you can try to like make a double ES chest with Elevated Explode. For example, it's going to be quite a bit more expensive, but you know, you can like fracture the Elevated Explode and just recomb it over and over again until you like fracture the Elevated Explode. And for the Watcher's Eye, I would definitely recommend trying to get a Watcher's Eye with like the Discipline Energy Shield per hit. It just feels absolutely incredible in T70s, it feels incredible in Blight, it just feels incredible in all the difficult content. Because your HP, you're just sometimes gonna get hit for like a chunk of damage. You're gonna drop and just instantly back to full. Drop, instantly back to full. Drop, instantly back to full. It feels very, very good to have. Like this, plus the evasion energy on kill here, plus the mana on kill. Just an incredible, incredible combo. And other than that, everything is pretty much just the standard, what I've had in my POBs before. So, what I would say when you're going like through the damage priority and tank priority, definitely do 0. On both of these, just do 0 ASAP. It's like the most important one. It's so cheap to do for how good it feels, you know? And after that, you can like start just going through the list and determining what you need. For example, I do think you should do a Tawdra Gala before the Mage Blood. That is something I changed my mind on, just because Mage Bloods are quite expensive currently. But like, if you're like just constantly upgrading your damage and you're still dying in things, and you're like already at 0.4 and stuff, or like, you know, you're already at like the Mere Dagger and like the Mere Helm and stuff, you should definitely like just look at these things as well. Just try to like do a good mixture of damage and tank priority when upgrading. But in general, I didn't want to just give a set order which you should upgrade, because I do think it's just going to depend on how the build's feeling for you. For me personally, the most important upgrade, the first thing I wanted to do was the tank priority, Twilight Regalia. Because as soon as you can go Twilight Regalia, you can swap to Chaos Inoculation. T17s suck if you don't have Chaos Immune. They just they feel awful. They definitely just do not feel good. But then after like Twilight Regalia, like I delayed my Mage Blood for quite a while before I eventually bought the Mage Blood. But part of my reason for delaying it is just, you know, Helica was 9 divines. Getting a focused amulet was 18 divines. You know, it was just so much cheaper to go for other upgrades first. Mage build is definitely the biggest tank upgrade in terms of just how much raw tankiness it gives you. So definitely worth saving up for if you can, if you reach a point where like you can comfortably farm and you know, you want to save up for your first big upgrade. Mage build is that upgrade. It just feels incredible. But anyway, YouTube, I hope that this POB helps people a lot, and I've been receiving a lot of positive feedback about this build. I mean, we've been farming like Blight and stuff. Like I've saw other Penance brand builds doing Blight, and like they're like chain dying. They're like struggling on Blight and things. And honestly, my biggest weakness in Blight is my computer. We're not dying. Like I'm doing 9-lane Blights, absolutely insane modifiers, 3 Risk Scarabs, 2 Risk Scarabs and Blooming, whatever it might be. Like, this is the current scrap setup I'm going. I'm not even using a headhunter, which makes the maps much easier. And I'm just tanking everything. I'm just living through the Blight. I'm just killing them. I'm just reaching the end. I'm gonna upload a Blight, like, preview video, either before or after this progression video, that just shows, like, I did this insane Blight that was so juiced that when we got to the looting phase, there was so much loot, my game just crashed. And that entire Blight, I was just standing inside the pack of enemies, just tanking all their hits, not really giving a fuck about any of the damage. I'm very, very happy with how the build feels, and a lot of people comment to my Twitch chat seem to be feeling the same. So I really hope that people can try this build out and just have as much fun as I've been having with this league, because it's honestly been a really awesome league for me. Anyway, thank you so much, YouTube. I hope you guys had a lovely day further, and goodbye. Bye, YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Bye-bye.